Let's talk about the difficulty of allusions. Allusions are one of the most common problems that we run into that cause us difficulty in a text. There are basically two kinds of allusions that we run into when we're reading fiction. The first kind is an allusion that is the basis for the whole story. So if that allusion comes from popular culture, for example, in Gregory Maguire's novel Wicked, the allusion is to the Wizard of Oz, which pretty much everybody's familiar with. And then Maguire, because he knows his audience is familiar with the story, can play around with it and retell it in some really interesting ways. But sometimes we run across books that are using an allusion in the same way as Maguire is, an allusion that is sort of the bedrock or the foundation for the whole novel, but it's an allusion that we may not be as familiar with. So a great example of that would be Jane Smiley's novel, 1,000 Acres. In this novel, Smiley is using the story of King Lear, Shakespeare's play, as the basis for the whole novel. Now, it's possible to read 1,000 Acres and enjoy the novel for what it is and not even really be aware that King Lear is operating as an allusion throughout the text. But of course, you're going to enjoy the novel more if you are aware of that allusion and if you have some familiarity with King Lear. So there's the problem. How are you going to get that kind of familiarity in order to enjoy the text? I'll talk about a couple of strategies in just a second. There's not always just one allusion underpinning the novel. Sometimes there are multiple allusions. James Joyce's novel Ulysses does both of these things. Ulysses is well known as one of the most difficult texts written in English, and Joyce is using the story of Ulysses as the underpinning for the whole novel, but he's also alluding along the way to all kinds of political and historical and literary references that we may not be familiar with. So I want to talk about a few strategies you can use as a reader when you're approaching allusions and they're causing you difficulty in a text. First of all, look stuff up. Why not? The problem is you don't want to do a ton of research in order to understand what you're reading, but here's a great use for Wikipedia. It's a quick and easy way to just get a little bit of background information on whatever it is you need to know. So if you wanted to read Smiley's 1,000 Acres, you could just go into Wikipedia and read up a little bit on King Lear just to get an idea of the story, the characters, and what's going on in that play in order to at least catch on to some of what Smiley's doing in her novel. Another strategy you might want to try is to get an annotated edition of the book you're reading. So last summer I decided to read Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, another classic. I had never read it before, so I did a little bit of research into which edition would offer me the best annotations. And I came up with this particular translation, and it comes along with lots of footnotes in the back, so I was able to follow along with a lot of the allusions that weren't familiar to me in that way. Also, you often hear with these Russian novels about the difficulty of following the characters, so I made myself a character list in order to follow who the characters were, another common difficulty of certain kinds of books. A third suggestion about dealing with allusions is to simply decide it doesn't matter. So when you're reading a difficult book and you have a sense that there are allusions that you're missing out on, but you feel overwhelmed by them, just read the book. Try to enjoy it on the level that you're reading it on, knowing that you can always go back and learn more and pick apart the text if you want to. But if learning the allusions ahead of time and following them is keeping you from a first reading of the text, just go for it. Try it, see what happens. I hope these strategies will help you deal with the difficulty of allusions in a text, and I hope your book club will give a try to some book that maybe intimidates you a little bit in terms of its allusions, and try these strategies and see if they help. Read on!